The starship floated above the barren plains of Clyron, its silver hull reflecting the pale light of twin suns. Inside, Alara, the daughter of Chief Velen, stared out the window, her fingers pressed lightly against the cool glass. She had spent her entire life in the polished halls of her father's palace, surrounded by advisors, guards, and endless lessons on diplomacy and control. And yet here she was, about to face a fate she could hardly imagine. Her father's voice had been firm, leaving no room for argument. Alara, your training is complete, but our clan requires alliances beyond our borders. You will travel to the planet Terra Nova and join with the human they call Jarek. He will be your partner for the next cycle. This is not a request. Alara's heart had sunk the moment she heard the words. Humans were unpredictable, untamed, and, according to many of her advisors, primitive. She had studied their history, their tendencies, and their strange customs, and every story she had read made her wary. But most of all, she could not imagine herself leaving the safety of her home, boarding a ship with someone whose ways she could not predict. The shuttle's engines hummed, vibrating under her feet as it descended through Terra Nova's dusty atmosphere. Alara's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening behind her. A tall figure stepped in, broad-shouldered, with a stance that spoke of confidence honed by years of outdoor life rather than formal training. His dark eyes assessed her, calm but calculating. "Alara?" he asked, his voice carrying a rough edge but not unkind. She nodded, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. "I'm Jarek," he said simply, offering a hand. She hesitated. Trust was a foreign concept to her, and shaking hands with a human, especially one rumored to be a skilled fighter, felt strange. But the gesture was genuine, and slowly she placed her hand in his. The touch was firm, practical, and almost comforting in its simplicity. Alara pulled back quickly, her face flushing with surprise, not from fear, but from the realization that this human was not what she had expected. They traveled in silence through the small town near the shuttle landing. Jarek guided her with easy confidence, his movements efficient yet careful not to overstep. Alara watched the humans around them, marveling at how different everything was from her home world. The uneven ground, the scattered buildings, the rough laughter of people who worked with their hands rather than with words or status. "You'll need to learn to ride," Jarek said suddenly, glancing at her. "If we're going to work together, you can't be afraid of a horse or the land." Alara's eyes widened. She had studied combat strategies, negotiation tactics, and diplomatic protocols, but she had never handled an animal. Her world had machines, not creatures bred for speed and endurance. I don't know if I can," she admitted softly. "You'll surprise yourself," Jarek said, his voice calm but firm. "I'll help, but you have to try." Reluctantly, Alara followed him to a nearby stable. The horses were massive and powerful, their muscles rippling under their glossy coats. She felt a pang of fear as one of them whinnied, stamping the ground. "Start with basics," Jarek instructed. "Walk, then trot, then run. Don't fight the horse. Work with it. Trust it, and it will trust you." Alara nodded, swallowing her fear. The first few moments were awkward. She stumbled, nearly losing her balance, and the horse reacted, tossing its head. But Jarek was there beside her, steadying her, offering guidance without scolding. Slowly, step by step, she began to feel a rhythm. Her movements aligned with the horses, and she realized that trust was not just about the animal. It was about herself, too. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Terra Nova's sky in shades of orange and purple, Alara had managed to ride the horse with a sense of balance she hadn't known she possessed. She felt a small spark of pride. "Not bad," Jarek said, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "You're learning faster than I expected." Alara looked at him, her usual pride clashing with an unfamiliar respect. "You make it sound easy." "It's not easy," he admitted. "But anyone willing to try can do it. You just have to want it." They rode in silence for a while, the wind carrying the smell of dust and grass. Alara found herself thinking about her life back home, the strict rules, the endless expectations, the weight of being a chief's daughter. Here on this rough planet with a human who didn't care for titles or status, she felt free in a way she had never known. As night fell, they reached a small encampment. Jarek set up a fire, the flames crackling and warming them both. Alara watched him move, efficient and confident, tending to the camp with ease. She realized that she had underestimated humans. Their strength wasn't just in their bodies, but in their adaptability, their resourcefulness, their courage in the face of uncertainty. You're not like the stories I've read, she said softly, and you're not like the stories your father's advisors told you, he replied. The words hung between them, a quiet acknowledgement of the distance they had both traveled, not just across space, but across the boundaries of expectation and assumption. Alara felt a flicker of curiosity. Could she learn from him? Could she trust him? It was a thought she had never allowed herself before. Jarek looked up at the stars, his expression unreadable. Tomorrow we start training for real. The terrain out there isn't forgiving, and neither are the threats waiting for us. If we're going to survive, we need to be ready. Together. Alara nodded, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She had always been trained to lead, to command, to strategize. But she had never been trained to rely on someone else, not fully, not without reservation. Now she had no choice. The fire crackled and the shadows danced across their faces. For the first time, Alara felt a spark of excitement beneath the fear. The path ahead would be hard, full of danger and challenges she could not yet imagine. But with Jarek at her side, she realized that she might have a chance, not just to survive, but to discover a strength she had never known. And as she lay down under the alien stars, the vast sky stretching endlessly above her, Alara allowed herself a small, secret thought. Maybe, just maybe, this human wasn't the punishment she had feared. Maybe he was the beginning of something far greater than she could have imagined. The next morning, the twin suns of Terra Nova rose over the rugged landscape, casting long shadows across the plains. Alara awoke to the smell of crisp air and smoke from the small fire Jarek had already rekindled. He moved with quiet efficiency, tending to the horses and preparing a simple breakfast. She watched him for a moment, realizing how seamlessly he blended strength and patience, qualities she had never expected from a human. "You awake?" he asked without turning, his voice calm but alert. "I am," she replied, rising slowly. She stretched and adjusted the simple gear they had been provided. The sense of unease she had felt yesterday was still there, but mingled now with a strange excitement. She had survived the first day. She had ridden a horse. And for the first time, she had relied on someone without fear. "Good," Jarek said. "Today we move across the northern plains. It's rough terrain, and there are areas known for sudden storms and dangerous wildlife. We'll need to work together. I expect mistakes, but I also expect effort." Alara nodded, her thoughts turning inward. Mistakes were part of learning, part of survival, but effort was something she had never doubted in herself. Still, trusting another person with her safety? That was new. They set off, the horses' hooves thudding against the hard-packed soil. The wind carried a sharp, earthy scent, and the horizon stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged cliffs and occasional rocky outcrops. Jarek led the way with quiet confidence, pointing out hazards and teaching her how to read the land. "Notice the cloud formations," he said, gesturing to dark shapes gathering in the sky. "They tell you when storms are coming. Humans learn to read signs like this. You can too." Alara studied the clouds, noting the subtle shifts in color and texture. It was different from her studies at the palace, where lessons were given in words and diagrams. Here, learning required observation, intuition, and action, and she realized she enjoyed it. The challenge felt alive, real, and immediate. Hours passed, and they navigated through narrow passes and rocky valleys. Alara struggled at first, her body tiring from the constant motion of the horse. But Jarek was patient, offering guidance and encouragement. He adjusted her posture, showed her how to balance on uneven ground, and reminded her to breathe. Slowly, she began to feel a rhythm, not just with the horse, but with the land itself. As the day wore on, dark clouds thickened overhead. The wind picked up, and a distant rumble of thunder warned them of the approaching storm. Jarek glanced at her. "Time to find shelter," he said. They reached a natural cave set into a cliffside. It was small, but it would protect them from the storm. Jarek quickly secured the horses outside and led Alara inside. The cave smelled of damp stone and earth, a sharp contrast to the clean, artificial sense of her home. They sat near the back of the cave, the storm outside growing louder. Rain pelted the rocks. Wind howled through the cliffs, and distant lightning lit the sky. Alara felt a thrill of both fear and awe. This planet was untamed, unpredictable, and alive in a way she had never known. "You've done well today," Jarek said after a moment, his eyes reflecting the flickering light of a small fire they had managed to start. "You've learned quickly, and you're paying attention. That's the difference between surviving and failing out here." Alara met his gaze, a faint smile tugging at her lips. I didn't think I could do it, but I did. Thanks to your guidance, he shrugged modestly. You did it. I just pointed the way. For a long while, they sat in silence, listening to the storm. Alara's mind wandered, not to fear, but to possibilities. If she could survive here, if she could learn and adapt, then perhaps she could achieve more than she ever had at home. Perhaps humans were not primitive. Perhaps they were stronger, braver, and more capable than anyone had imagined. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the land washed clean and sparkling under the twin suns. They resumed their journey, moving further into the northern plains. Along the way, they encountered a herd of massive Terranovan grazers, creatures larger than any animal Alara had seen. One of the animals became agitated, its eyes darting toward the cliffs. Jarek acted immediately, guiding Alara to stay low and move calmly, using techniques she had never imagined needing but learned instinctively. The creature bolted past them, harmless, but startling. Alara felt her heart pound in her chest. She realized that in moments like this, trust was everything. Trust in the horse, trust in the land, trust in the human beside her. She had never thought she would depend on anyone. But now she did, and it felt like strength, not weakness. As the day continued, they encountered more challenges. Narrow passes where rocks could fall without warning, sudden drops where a misstep could mean injury, and patches of rough terrain that tested their endurance. With each challenge, Alara grew more confident. She began to anticipate hazards, adjust her movements, and act with precision. Jarek noticed, nodding with approval. You're getting the hang of this, he said, a rare smile breaking across his face. Soon you'll be able to lead through terrain like this on your own. Alara's pride swelled, but she shook her head. I couldn't have done it without you. That's the point, he said. No one survives out here alone. Not humans, not aliens. Trust and teamwork. That's how we make it. By the time night fell, they had reached a high plateau overlooking a vast valley. The view was breathtaking. Rivers glinting like silver, forests stretching into the distance, and mountains rising against the horizon. Alara stood at the edge, the wind tugging at her hair, feeling a sense of wonder she had never experienced in the confines of her palace. This is incredible, she whispered. Jarek glanced at her, a knowing look in his eyes. Out here the world feels bigger, doesn't it? You realize how small your problems are and how much you're capable of handling. Alara nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. For the first time, she felt a spark of true independence. Her father had sent her here as a punishment, thinking she would struggle, falter, or even fail. But instead, she had learned something far greater: resilience, adaptability, and the strength that comes from trusting another being, not just oneself. As they prepared to camp for the night, a distant sound caught their attention, a low hum, mechanical and deliberate. Jarek tensed immediately, scanning the valley below. Trouble, he muttered. We're not alone. Alara's heart quickened, but she did not falter. Instead, she stood beside him, ready to face whatever came. Jarek handed her a small device, a combination of alien and human technology. Stay close, follow my lead. We handle this together. The hum grew louder, and shapes emerged from the shadows. A patrol of robotic sentinels, their sensors glowing red as they scanned the plateau. Alara's training and quick thinking were put to the test. She remembered Jarek's lessons. Move calmly, anticipate, and trust in your partner. Together, they coordinated their movements, using the terrain to their advantage. Rocks, shadows, and careful timing allowed them to stay hidden and avoid detection. Alara's heart raced, but with every step she gained confidence. She was no longer just a chief's daughter. She was a capable fighter, a strategist, and a partner to someone she had once thought was just a human cowboy. By the time the sentinels passed, they were safe, breathing heavily, but triumphant. Alara looked at Jarek, her respect and admiration deepened. I never imagined I could do that. You did, he said simply. That's what counts. As they settled for the night, the stars of Terra Nova shining above, Alara felt a profound shift within herself. The punishment her father had sent her on had become an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to discover that humans were more than stories had led her to believe. They were resilient, clever, and brave. And in Jarek, she had found a partner who could match her determination and challenge her in ways she had never imagined. For the first time, Alara felt not fear, but hope. And as she drifted to sleep under the alien sky, she knew that whatever challenges awaited them in the days ahead, they would face them together. And humanity, in all its unpredictable brilliance, would shine,